Hey, Deep Threat Sports Network fans. This is Colin and Garrett with another episode of Foul 'em Hard. We're back. Hey, the action is packed. It's crunch time right now, Garrett. I mean, we these teams that are on the bubble are out of time, and we are going to talk about that here on this episode. There has been tons to dissect here, really a lot to go over. We're going to try to hit on the most important things. Kind of what we have in store for you this episode is, the typical injury bug conversation, what's really lingering out there for some of these teams that are going to be tournament teams are trying to make a late push. Our top 25, our conference tournament chat. This is our last episode of the regular season. Garrett, feels like this basketball season has really flown by. I mean, this has been absolutely lightning speed, and you and I doing this has been tons of fun with it. So we're going to dive into some conference tournament chat, who Garrett and I think are probably going to win the conference tournaments. And maybe we got a couple dark horses in there that you guys out there may agree with, may not agree with. And then the best time of the year is here. Going to do some madness talk and some pop in the bubble, and then bangers of the week to round out the regular season. But before we get going, Garrett, how you been, man? You been tuned into a lot of basketball here lately?
Yeah, man, I can't believe we're getting this close to the end. It feels like it was just 2 weeks ago that I was watching the opening night of games tip off, and here we are. Most of these teams have, maybe one, two more games max until their conference tournaments, and you just like you said, Colin, these bubble teams are running out of time in a hurry. Wins become much more important, and losses also become much more important this time of year.
To your point, dude, I feel like you and I were just on here talking about Feast Week. I feel like you and I were just on here making our predictions for the season and who we thought was going to make a run. Some of those look really good, some of those not so hot. But I mean, man, this has been awesome. And yeah, I just can't believe how fast it's gone. But let's be honest, this is what we were talking about all season. This is what we've been waiting on. This is your and my favorite time of the year. I am fired up. So, Garrett, go ahead and take us away real quick with some injuries that we have that are on the horizon that are going to linger around and cause some teams some problems moving forward.
Yeah, this list is getting shorter and shorter by the day, which is what you want this time of year. Most of these guys who have been dinged up have been having quite a bit of rest. So the first starter we're going to go with is Malik Brown for Duke. He's got a bummed up shoulder. He's kind of the glue guy for Duke. He's not going to blow you away with his points, his rebounds, assists, but he's kind of just a Mr. Do It All for Duke. If they need a big bucket, obviously they're not going to lean on Malik Brown, but he's still the guy that they rely on to give them some good minutes. They expect him to return to the ACC tournament. Worst case scenario, probably be March Madness, but I would expect to see him in the ACC tournament. Next up, we have Denver Jones for Auburn. He's got a bummed up ankle. He missed the game against Texas A&M. They think he'll return to the game on Saturday against Alabama. Colin, we're going to make that game seem like a much bigger deal than it probably is to those two teams. If I was Auburn, if he's not 100%, I'm not putting him out there. You got to make sure your guys are healthy this time of year. Max Klesmit, Wisconsin, lower leg injury. He's actually missed the last two games for Wisconsin. They're hopeful he can make a return for the season finale, but man, it's going to be close. From what I've seen, he's not doing so hot, but I know with Max being a senior, he's going to do everything he can to get back out there. And lastly, Adu Taro for Arkansas. Not really sure what's going on. It's undisclosed. He's actually missed 3 straight games after the missed game against Vandy on Tuesday. If Arkansas wants any shot at this time of the season, they almost need to win out, in my opinion. They may not need to win the SEC tournament, but they need to get at least to the semis or the finals at this point, and they can't do it without Taro.
Yeah, I would say of all the injuries you just talked about, he is by far and away the most important. And Arkansas doesn't look the same without him. I mean, we're not going to spend too much time on these previous games that have happened since we last met. But Garrett, Arkansas scored 14 points in the first half of a basketball game. Honest question here, because I don't know off the top of my head, and I probably should have looked this up before we got going. Is 14 points and a half like the lowest a team has ever scored in a power conference?
It's the lowest I can ever recall. I mean, you had some really ugly bloodbaths when Virginia's defense was at like the peak Virginia, where they were holding teams in the low 20s. But I don't know if I've seen a team get held under 15 since I've become a huge college basketball fan, which has been every bit of 10, 15 years.
That was honestly, I watched all that game because I was in shock. Like I felt like I was watching history in a negative way, and that was the worst basketball game I've ever seen from a team that we're going to sit here and talk about. It's on the bubble, and honestly can make a push. And if they get in, part of me still thinks they're a team that can make some noise, right? I think they were a team of mine that I had picked going pretty far before this season began. I thought John Calipari could flip the script. I feel like we talk about him a lot on here. You and I were texting before that game started. This is a game that Calipari loses, and hey, it prevailed. Everything you said through text came to fruition in that game, and I thought it was going to be different for them. But moving on to our top 25, but before we do that, this is going to be the last top 25 that Garrett and I give to you, because the next time that we meet, we are going to meet Monday the 17th, the day after Selection Sunday, and we're going to come on here and honestly give you what would be like our instant reaction, kind of what we are seeing taking place, what we see when we see the bracket, how we think things are going to unfold, and I'm sure Garrett and I will have tons in store for you on that Monday episode. I'm sure we're going to come at you with our picks to win it all, our final four picks, teams to watch out that could make a Cinderella type run. And I cannot wait for that episode. But right now, the last top 25 that Fallon Hard is going to bring to you. At 25, Mississippi State, 24, Arizona, 23, BYU, 22, Texas A&M, 21, St. Mary's, 20, Marquette, 19, Kentucky, 18, Purdue, 17, Michigan, 16, Memphis, 15, Missouri, 14, Louisville, 13, Maryland. At number 12, Wisconsin, 11, Clemson. Rounding out the top 10 here, we have Iowa State at 10, Texas Tech at 9, Michigan State at 8, Alabama at 7, St. John's at 6, Florida at 5, Tennessee 4, Houston 3, Duke 2, Auburn 1. Garrett, real quick, outside, just kind of off the hip here, something I want to throw at you just to see what your first thought is on this. Outside of, let's say, the top 7, who would you put a small wager on to make a national championship run?
I don't know if I would ever take them to win a national championship. I think, personally, Colin, I think this is a very similar year that we saw UConn and Purdue make the championship. I think there's really 7 teams, 6 teams, maybe even you narrow that down to 5 teams that I think can win this thing. And I don't know if I'm straying away from those top 5, but I was just going to say this. A team who I don't think anyone in the country wants to play right now, based on what I've seen them do, is BYU. Colin, I'm telling you, I watched the entire game of this double overtime bloodbath they had against Iowa State. It is really hard to win in Ames, Iowa. And this Iowa State team, we give them a hard time, but they're a good basketball team. And BYU just fundamentally dominated that game. And I'm telling you, Richie Sanders, remember his name in March, because that dude, there's nothing he does that is bad. If they get the right draw in the tournament, they will be a Final Four team for me. I'm saying that right now.
And they're a team, too. Let me be clear. Didn't see the BYU take coming. Don't hate the BYU take at all. I honestly kind of love it, because they are a team, too, that when they get hot from 3, they can stroke it. And they can stroke it with the best of them. And sometimes that's what you see teams do in March and make a run. I mean, that's how you see a lot of these mid-majors come in here. They get hot from 3 and they stroke it, and then they take off. I kind of have 2 for you here, not going too far out on a limb on one of these. I am a firm believer in Texas Tech and JT Toppin. I think they are a team outside of that top 7 for me, Garrett, that I firmly believe can make a Final Four run. And I think they can make a national championship run. I'm pretty set on that. And depending where they fall in that bracket, I will be talking about them on that Monday episode after Selection Sunday. I'm pretty confident in that. And I'm also pretty confident in another team that I'm going to talk about right here in Memphis. I think Memphis is a team, I said it before on here, that I think when things are going, they are going really, really good. My only concern with Memphis is kind of coming in here down the stretch, haven't had some of the toughest games. So when you get into March and you're getting everybody's best, how do they kind of respond to some of these really good teams that match up well against them? But they got really good guard play. They're a really good team. I believe that they are very well coached. And PJ Haggerty, man, he's one of the best players in the country, I think, when it comes to the college basketball court right now. And I'm a firm believer in Memphis and Texas Tech.
I love the Memphis take. I talked about Memphis a week or 2 ago, how it's a team we don't talk about a lot on this podcast just because they're not in one of those big Power 5 conferences. But they have every tool needed to make a really deep run in March. I love that take. My take with Texas Tech and what worries me about the Red Raiders, if they get matched up with Obviously they're probably going to be in that 3 seed range. That's kind of where I expect them to be. If they get put in a region with Auburn or Alabama or even, yeah, I'm going to stick with those two, Auburn or Alabama. I don't think they can score enough to beat those kind of teams. I just don't know if they can offensively keep up with an Auburn, an Alabama, a team of that nature. But defensively, what Texas Tech is always capable of doing. They can score the ball better than Texas Tech teams in the past, but it still worries me to make it all the way. I think offensively, they're just not as good as I want them to be.
See, I don't think they necessarily can score with them either, but I feel like they match up with an Auburn. Honestly, damn near just about as good as anybody in the country can match up with Auburn. And I don't know. I just feel like they've kind of really found their stride. I'm confident in them, and I love watching Toppin play basketball. He can take a basketball game over, he put a team on his back, and I don't know. They almost every time I watch them, they almost have like that Cinderella vibe for me. Not really Cinderella because they're a higher seed, obviously, but like they just have that kind of coming out of nowhere. Projected to finish pretty low in the Big 12 coming into the season, I'm in the middle of the pack, and they have just taken off. I love watching them play basketball, and that same thing goes for Memphis. So I cannot wait to see where these teams fall on the 16th, and we talk about it the 17th because I may look at you and be like, "Yeah, Garrett, Texas Tech got a hell of a run. They're just not going to do it." So I'm excited for that.
And Colin, that's really what this tournament's all about. It's all about the matchups you get early in this tournament. It doesn't the takes that we're making now, those might completely change when I see how this bracket is set up.
Without a doubt.
Completely change.
Yep. There is no doubt about that. I mean, some of these mid majors, we're going to dive into them too on the 17th, and they may match up really well against some of these power schools. And we talked about it, I think, 2 episodes ago. You see a team like Iowa State, Tennessee, Michigan State. Some of these teams go on these really bad scoring droughts, and that's all it takes to open a door. And when you let up a 13, 14, 15, even a 16 seed team have just a little bit of confidence and they hang around in that game long enough and they're making enough shots, that is all some of those teams need to light the fire and take off. So you are right. Some of this right now, we may throw all out the window. Some of this may be repetitive a little bit. So we're really going to see how it unfolds. And it all starts this coming next week with the conference tournaments. Garrett, let's dive into the SEC first. Let's just what I think is the best conference in college basketball this year. I feel like most people would agree with that take. Not really a hot one. Let's go ahead and dive into that one first. Who's your pick to win it? Who's your lock pick to win it, I should say? And do you think there's any chance a dark horse or, a 3, 4, 5, 6 seed can kind of come in and win this thing?
I think the pick to win is Auburn, and I hate to be that boring, but at the beginning of the year, I would have told you Alabama. And I still think Alabama is neck and neck with Auburn. I really do. But I think Auburn is I think it's Auburn, I think it's Bama, and I think the rest of the SEC is down below. I just think Auburn is a much better basketball team at this point than anyone else in the country, really. So I'm going to take Auburn to win this thing. Dark horse wise, probably the only conference that I could honestly say, Colin, I can't even give you a dark horse because it's either going to be Auburn, Alabama, Florida, Tennessee. Those are your 4 teams. It's one of those 4. Maybe Texas A&M can make a run. I just don't think they're good enough to beat 2 teams like that back to back. I really don't. And same goes for Mizzou.
Well, speaking of a team that goes on a scoring drought, Texas A&M. I mean, that's why I don't think they can go into this tournament or necessarily the main March Madness tournament per se and go on and make a run because they have too many of those scoring droughts as well. And honestly, I agree with you, man. I think Auburn is the team to pick here, but I'm going to go against the grain a little bit. And from what I have seen in the Florida Gators here recently and how they are humming, I'm going to go out and take the Florida Gators to win the SEC conference tournament. And I'm obviously not 100% confident in that because they do have teams like Alabama and Auburn that they're going to meet at some point, I would imagine. And for that reason, it's going to be really, really tough. This is going to be the toughest conference to win, I think. So I'm going to go Florida Gators. They've been extremely hot. They're a really good basketball team, got really good guard play. Elijah Martin, Walter Clayton. I mean, you could name the whole entire roster. When those guys get going, they really get going. But, Garrett, I have a hot take on a dark horse team here because I want to make it a little bit interesting. I was looking at the conference standings, and I was like, what is a team that when they play really good and when their good guys really get going, they're a good basketball team? That's the Texas Longhorns. You know, being a newer team to this SEC conference, I think Rodney Terry needs this. The head coach of the Texas Longhorns, I feel like he's feeling a little bit of pressure. I've read that he's feeling a little bit of pressure. This team's feeling a little bit of pressure. They're not necessarily really on the bubble anymore, but if things go really, really bad and some of these other teams that are on the bubble goes really, really good for them, Texas can maybe find their way on the outside looking in. Kind of a long stretch there, but Texas needs this. Rodney Terry needs this. Trey Johnson is incredible. Kaluma, this is a really good team when they get going. And what I like about Rodney Terry a lot of the times is he really trusts in his 7 to 8 guys, and he plays the shit out of them. Hey, man, if you're not making shots right now, stay out there, find it, keep shooting, don't stop, keep doing what you're doing. You're in the game for a reason. So I think that if the matchups fall accordingly, and if they get a decent draw, which in this tournament is going to be really, really hard, I think Texas could potentially make a run.
What is a decent draw in this tournament? LSU?
I don't have a good answer for that.
I think there's two. LSU and South Carolina. And if I'm not mistaken, I'd have to look at how the SEC tournament bracket looks. I think those two might have to play each other first
to get in, right? Isn't that how the
I
SEC
believe that's
sets up?
So then there's no easy matchup. I mean, who the hell wants to play Arkansas? Who wants to play Vanderbilt? I don't want to see a Vanderbilt at this point.
Mizzou doesn't want to play Vanderbilt. That's for damn sure.
I don't want to play anyone in that conference. I'm gonna ask you
Oklahoma, maybe.
I'm gonna ask you a question though, and I think there's two. I can see two different arguments for this. Do you think it's an advantage or a disadvantage playing? For the SEC, for example, let's say you win that tournament and you play 4 games in 4 days, and then you have a 3-day turnaround and you're playing in March in the March Madness tournament. Do you find it to be sometimes a disadvantage to win your conference tournament? Or is that a way
there's two parts to this. I could see it being a disadvantage for the fact of maybe you have some health concerns going on, not getting as much rest. But I'm a really big, and I said this, to kind of tie it back into another style tournament that just got going, the college football tournament, like the bracket and the playoff setup. I talked about this on that show too. I am a very big believer in momentum. I'm a huge momentum guy. When things are going really well, you don't want to stop. And I think what you saw to kind of circle it back again, you saw teams that got a bye in that college football playoff got absolutely rocked, all of them, flat. So there's really two parts to that, Garrett. If you got to get healthy and you need some rest, yeah, going and winning, it's not great because you have that short turnaround. But then again, if you win it and your guys are riding an all-time high and they felt what that feels like to go out there in front of a big crowd, win a big game, win a trophy, I don't know. I want to ride the momentum, I think I want to go with I want to win this shit and I want to keep winning. I don't want to necessarily lose. I'm a guy that I hate losing, so I can't necessarily say losing is a good thing, but I could also see the case. Absolutely.
It's and the reason I even asked this question, and the more I thought about it, the more I could see both sides of it. I feel like I remember teams like Iowa, or I feel like I have a lot of teams at memory that they go on this magical run, they win their conference tournament, they come out and they lay the biggest, fattest egg first game of March Madness, and it's like, what the hell happened? And it's like they just looked flat. Then you look at other teams, like I think of NC State or Oregon State a couple years ago that they win the conference tournament and they come out and win 3 games in March Madness. It's like this team is unbeatable. I guess 2 ways to look at it. Just an interesting thought.
No, and I think it's a really good thought. And I think if you ask the college basketball fans, the players probably wouldn't give you the most accurate answer, or the coaches. But if you ask the college basketball fans from what we've seen, or maybe collect some data through past years, that's probably a 50-50 split, honestly, on what you want. And sometimes, too, if you go back, I don't remember who we were talking about, Garrett. I feel like it was Auburn. When you go back and we talk about how we thought it was a good loss, right? Like there are some teams that it probably wouldn't hurt them to get a little stunned here, that are shoe-ins into the tournament, and maybe get a little stunned here, because once you get into that tournament, you can't lose. It's over. You don't get a revive. You don't get a retry. It's over. So maybe you need to get your loss out of the way here and see what that feels like, and know that you don't want to do that again and learn from it. So there's so many ways to dissect that question. It's a great question, and I don't feel like you would ever get the same answer from two people. So moving on to the Big Ten Conference Tournament. Since you did the last one, I'll take this one because I don't know how you're going to feel about this one here. I got a take here, and I look at the Big Ten, Garrett, and I'm not overwhelmed by any one team. I look at the Big Ten and I'm like, okay, Michigan State, they're good. They're good. You got to respect what they've done. Michigan, good. You got to respect them. Very beatable. Michigan State, very beatable. Purdue, they're good. Very beatable. Maryland, good. Very beatable. Wisconsin, good. Very beatable. I look at all the ranked teams and I'm just like, I don't think it's going to happen here for any of these teams. I'm going to take the Illinois Fighting Illini to win the Big Ten Conference Tournament. They are a team that I feel like could have that NC State type situation. Obviously, it's not a win to get in the tournament like NC State was, but it is very much so we've had some serious struggles. We've seen Brad Underwood lose his shit on the side of on the games. We have seen this team look absolutely awful at times. We've seen this team look really, really good at times. And if Illinois plays good basketball, they play A basketball, B plus basketball, they are right up there with the best teams in the Big Ten Conference. And I think they find their stride, and I think they roll some momentum. And I think they're a team that every team should look out for in the month of March.
I don't hate it. I mean, you go back and you listen 3 or 4 episodes ago. I guess it was longer than that. It was early in the season, actually, is when it was. I was talking about how I thought Illinois would probably end up winning this conference. And I was talking about how I think Kasparas Jakobčonis is the best player in the Big Ten. He has had a substantial decline. I don't know what happened with him because he looked like an unstoppable point guard early in the season and just fell apart. But they can get him rolling. Humber House can hit the three with anyone in the country. Obviously, Boswell is a tremendous guy to have on any team. They have every piece that they need to win this thing. It's just, can they find it for a 4-day stretch is what they need.
It's truly going to come down to relying on Jakobčonis to be the X factor and kind of not put the team on his back, but kind of put the team on his back, man. Like he's going to have to go in and he can score 20 a night, minimum, in all seriousness. Tall ask for a freshman, but I mean, we're also asking Cooper Flagg at Duke. He's done it all year. He do the same thing, right? So it is not too big to have this guy come in and really light up in the month of March and get his name back up top of the boards.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with a little more chalky pick here, and I kind of did the same thing, Colin. I went down the list. It's like, man, I don't really like that. Don't really like this, and I just decided to go back to what wins you games in this month of the year, and it's guards and coaching. So I go with a team with probably the best coach in the Big Ten and the 2 best guards in the Big Ten in Purdue. I will take Braden Smith and Fletcher Loyer, and obviously Trey Kaufman-Renn. If I have to, I don't love it. Obviously, I'm an Indiana fan, but if I had to put money on who would win this conference, I'm going to lean with the guards and the coach. So I will take them. I think, and Colin, this is a little crazy too. Obviously, I'm a big Indiana homer, so I think Indiana's going to win it. That's just a homer pick. A true dark horse who very, very similar to Illinois. If they get hot and you're watching it, I was watching it right before this podcast. They were beating the brakes off of Michigan State.
Still are.
They still are?
Still are.
If the Iowa Hawkeyes find their rhythm from 3 for 4 days, which, trust me, they can. They can. If they find their rhythm from 3 for 4 days, no one's beating them. No one. And they're finding it right now. And if they can stick with that and keep it for a week and a half, you will not score enough points to keep up with this team. I promise you won't. Be a really good dark horse to take.
I don't hate it because you're right. When they start stroking it, man, good luck slowing them down. And Peyton Sandfort can shoot it. I haven't watched a ton of Iowa basketball games, but there has been moments where I watched them and I'm like, hey, man, they're a very respectable team. And talk about a team that really needs it. Like, needs it. This is a team that needs it. So I like the pick. I mean, you pick a team that has to make that run, and they've got to find some grit. And I don't hate those kind of picks. So it would be an unbelievable story if they did it because I don't think there's a whole lot of love out there for them. I would love, and I should have did this, I would love to see their odds to go in and win the Big Ten tournament. This Michigan State win could be very, very big for them. So this may be all the momentum they need, Garrett. I don't hate it.
Yeah, and you're going to see a pretty common trend with my dark horse picks. A lot of them are teams that can really shoot it from three. That if they stay hot for 4, 5 days in a row, you're not beating them. That's kind of the trend I usually go with in this kind of dark horse mode because it's really, and you said earlier, it's all momentum. If you get one of those days to go right, it can be a really strong uphill trend.
What any love for Ohio State, a team that's kind of on the bubble? Did you no love for them? I looked at them for a little bit, and I couldn't find myself to do it either.
I just they have some really important wins on the year. You look at their schedule, it's like, man, they picked up a win at Purdue. Like how
Yeah,
does this team go into Purdue and pick up a win? That's the one of the hardest places to play in basketball. Then you watch them, play in Indiana at home and they get beat. It's like this team just doesn't do it for me. The inconsistency. I think Bruce Thornton's really good. I think Devin Royal,
very good. Yep.
but as a whole, the team just doesn't excite me. They're a very bully ball type team, and I just don't like that play style this time of the year.
And they've got no depth. They've got
None.
like 4 guys. Like, they got 4 guys, and any of them get in foul trouble, it is over. So that was another reason for me, is just the no depth aspect to it. So moving on to the Big 12, Garrett, go ahead and hit me with yours.
I think I'm gonna stay chalk here, and it's a lot of chalk picks in a row. But the SEC, the ACC, the Big 12. I really feel like they've been headed by this three-headed monster all year. I think Houston is by far the best team in the Big 12. I don't even think it's close. They've won 22 of 23. LJ Cryer, who's honored one of the best 1-2 punches in college basketball. Their head coach is outstanding. Their play style has changed from a really hard-nosed defensive play style with virtually no offense to now a hard-nosed, blow your brakes off defensive play style. Oh, and we also have an offense now that can score. I'm not going to do any spoilers. It's going to be really hard for me not to have this team as my national champion. I'm being
Hey,
serious.
what's so funny about that is it's going to be really hard for me to not have this team as my national champion. So what we have seen from LJ Cryer here over the stretch of the last couple of weeks has been absolutely unbelievable. And I feel like this team has taken even another step when they played that Kansas basketball game and they're down 6 with like 8 set, whatever it was. It was we talked about it on here. So I said it was the best college basketball game I've ever watched. We have seen Houston take another level that I didn't know Houston necessarily had up their sleeve. And Kelvin Sampson and this basketball team are incredible. But what to not be chalk for me, I'm a bold takes kind of guy. I like to go against the grain a lot, have some controversial takes. Kind of gave it away earlier a little bit. I'm going to take Texas Tech to win the Big 12 conference championship for me, the Big 12 tournament. And I kind of touched on every reason why earlier, to be honest with you. So I'm not going to dive into them too much, but a team that I want to be on the lookout for, and at some point just tell me to cut ties, Garrett, because I've yet to do it. The Baylor Bears, maybe my dark horse here. I just tell myself they have Scott Drew as the coach. They have way too much talent. I have sound so repetitive episode and episode. At some point, I got to cut the ties, or Baylor's going to do it for me. I'm not stopping now, just on the slim chance that maybe they do it. Maybe they do. I don't want to get off too early. If they look like shit here, Garrett, I am cutting ties. You will not hear a Baylor conversation from me in the tournament bracket when we do our episode on the 17th. But I think they still can pony up and get the thing done.
It's going to be very interesting to see what kind of mindset Scott Drew can get these kids in because it's a completely new season. It's a fresh
It's a
restart.
new season.
Fresh restart from how horrendous this regular season was for Baylor. We'll see what they can do. You've looked this inconsistently bad for 3 straight months. I have very little confidence you're going to change anything,
Yeah.
but they have the talent to do so. I would never. Colin, I cannot stress this enough. Do not take them to win this tournament because they are so inconsistent that I don't think.
Oh, it's horrible.
I really don't see it. But it is Scott Drew. They have a very talented roster. If you want to take a dark horse, you can take them. Mine is West Virginia. For the sole reason that I think Javon Small is a dog. I think
Yeah.
he is a dog. He's one of my favorite players in college basketball. He does everything as absolutely hard as he can. He is 100% max effort kind of guy. scores the ball 3 levels at the rim, mid-range three. He's a hell of a defender, and I just like rooting for him. That's the only reason I have them as my sleeper. I do not think they can win this, but I think Javon Small can make some noise. They need to for tournament-wise.
West Virginia needs this. That's another team right there, to your point, that needs it. And I, once again, like those teams that need it. Going to move on to the ACC here. To be honest with you, man, this is not I'm going to keep mine brief. Picking Duke, all the obvious reasons. No need to really dissect it for me. I don't have a sleeper. It's Duke. If Duke doesn't win the ACC conference tournament, Garrett, I might do like a emergency podcast show with you and call you and be like, we have got to have a conversation. I think the only chance they don't win it is if Louisville goes on an absolute heater. Otherwise, it's Duke and only Duke.
I feel like we have a conference like this every year. Who can possibly beat this team in a conference tournament? And they end up never winning their tournament. I think Duke is probably going to sail away with this ACC tournament. There are 3 teams, in my opinion, that can beat them, possibly beat them. Louisville, I think most likely, just simply because they can hang 90 on them, just simply with their 3-ball. Clemson, because they've already done it, and I think their roster is good enough to do it. I don't love it, but I still think they're good enough to hang with Duke. They're older, a little more experienced, maybe. And third, UNC, just simply because of the rivalry and who they are. But I just don't think Duke loses this at all. Honestly, they probably need to. They need to be humbled because I don't think they've had a game inside of, no joke, 20 points in a month and a half. I mean, they have been beaten people by 30 or 40 points every night. They need a tight game really badly to get that feeling again.
Well, they're kind of one of those teams we talked about earlier, right? That let's get that loss out of the way if we're going to get that loss. You know, it sucks not winning it. We were so dominant, but hey, let's get that loss over with, see what it feels like, and move on. Sorry for that loud noise a second ago, Garrett. We got a buddy of ours calling me for some fantasy baseball advice mid-draft here, and I said, hey, man, it's just not going to happen right now. But, yeah, it's Duke, only Duke for me. Going to move on to the Big East. Garrett, I'm going to pat myself on the back just a little bit here. The St. John's, Rick Pitino-led, I love this basketball team. It's St. John's for me. I'm not stopping now. There's no way in hell I stop now. I rode this from the start. I'm going to stay on them. I'm going to continue to ride them. Give me St. John's all day long. Dark horse for me, Garrett, Villanova. Kyle Neptune needs it. Most likely going to be in real big trouble with some job security here. But with Wooga Poplar, Eric Dixon, anything's possible. Eric Dixon, one of the best players in the country. I've always been a firm believer in Wooga Poplar. This team does have really good guard play. It's time to ratchet it up. They need this, or they will be on the outside looking in at everything.
I think, truthfully, Colin, I think this is Kyle Neptune's last year, unless he makes like an Elite Eight, Final Four type run. He has done nothing great at his time as the Villanova head coach. This team had so much tradition, so much pride with Jay Wright as their coach, and it feels like Neptune is just sucking the life out of this team with, truthfully, a pretty damn good roster. I really think this roster is good. I think Longino's great. I think Poplar's phenomenal. I think he's one of the best guards in the conference. And obviously Dixon is one of the best offensive players in the country, and they can't win. I mean, they're fighting for their lives against teams like DePaul. If they don't go on a magic run, I think Neptune's time is up. And I think they really need to go on like an Elite Eight, Final Four type run. My team, I'm going to stick with them.
Can I stop you 1 second? Real quick, just before we move on from Villanova. This is a crazy-ass thought I had, just because he gave this coach a lot of trouble throughout the season. Does Villanova win more basketball games with Shaka Smart?
Oh, God, yeah. Oh, God.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I think, honestly, Colin, this might sound even crazier. I think Villanova's roster, their starting 5, is better than Marquette's. I really do. Obviously, I think Cam Jones is better than Eric Dixon. I think Dixon can score it better, but I think Cam Jones is a better basketball player. But I think 1 through 5, the starting roster, Villanova's better than Marquette. I really think that. But
I don't hate that.
But they just can't figure it out. I mean, it's a lot like a Baylor situation. This team can't find wins. They lose in the most disgusting ways possible, just horrendously disgusting.
Yeah, they do. You're exactly right. Just a thought I had. Every once in a while, I have like a thought, and I want to hear somebody else's thoughts on that real quick. So sorry to interrupt you. Moving back, who's your Big East pick?
I'm sticking with Marquette, and it's simply because of Cam Jones. I still think this player. I think this kid is the best player in the conference. I really do. I don't think there's anyone who can do what he does night in, night out that benefits the team like he does. Kadari Richmond's up there. Just a very different play style, these two are. Cam Jones is more of an offensive minded, three-level scoring threat. The whole deal offensively. Kadari Richmond's more, I'm in your face. I'm probably going to get 3 or 4 steals. I'm going to block you twice, and I'm going to dunk it on your face. There's very different players. I just worry about their ability to score it against a team like St. John's. They've already shown trouble getting the ball in the bottom of the hoop when they face this immense pressure. But I really think that was a one-time deal. I think this team offensively is good enough to beat anyone in this conference. I really do. Dark horse team is Creighton for a lot of the same reasons. I think offensively, with Stephen Ashworth, with Kalkbrenner, with Pop Isaacs, I think this team has underperformed all year. If they're going to make a run, it's in this tournament, and they carry that into March. They're a team, if they get the right draw in March, buckle up,
Yeah.
because they can beat anyone simply with their offensive ability.
Well, we've talked all season how they've underperformed, and they're a team that when they get it going, just like in Arkansas, just like a Baylor, just like all these teams we keep talking about, if and when they get it going, look out. And maybe now's the time. We've also talked before how some of these kids only really get up and get it going when it matters and their backs against the wall, like it is from this point forward. So I love the Creighton take, love the Marquette take. I feel like I dog on Shaka a lot, and that's the one reason why I can't ever put my money with Marquette, because I've done it so many times and he has let me down so many times in these big games. So that was kind of our conference tournament wrap up right there. Our takes. Let us know. Hey, man, leave some comments if you agree, if you think I'm a dipshit, if you think Garrett's takes are great. Hey, let us know. We are open to all of it. We are going to move on now to some madness talk here. Really just talk about the top 4 seeds, how it kind of looks like it's going to go, and recognize some of the top teams in the country real quick and see if we agree, disagree. Garrett, a couple weeks ago when we first started this topic here, we had some teams in the 1 seed spot that you and I, and the 2 seed spots that you and I were like, hey, don't expect those teams to stick around right there very long, and it looks like they haven't. So starting off with our 4 seeds, we have Iowa State, Oregon, Michigan, Kentucky. Let's give some recognition to Oregon and how they kind of flew up and they landed a top 4 seed here. If it were to end today, I don't think they're going to end up on that 4 seed line at the end of it all, Garrett. I don't. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's pretty remarkable how they came out of nowhere to fly that high real quick.
I think you might see them climb even higher. I really
Okay.
do. This team, they're interesting to me. They're funny. We talked about this team earlier in the year, Colin, very early, like feast week early.
Yeah.
But if you watch them, they kind of remind me of like a Denver Nuggets in the NBA, just their play style, the way they run through Biddle. And Jackson Shelstad has taken this monstrous leap up to where he is one of the top guards in the Big Ten conference. Weird saying Big Ten still for me when I talk Oregon.
Yeah.
But one of the best guards in this conference. TJ Bamba, when I watch him, if you put him in a Timberwolves jersey, I'm serious. If you put him in a Timberwolves jersey, he looks like Anthony Edwards, and he plays like
I knew that was coming.
He's not near as good, but he just looks like him. The way he moves and his play style is weirdly similar, not near as good. I'm not comparing him. I'm just saying they look similar. The way they move and the moves they make is very similar. This team is good. I think the highest you're going to see them is a 3, but I don't think you'll see them drop much lower than a 4.
Okay. All right. Hey, you kind of sold me on that a little bit. Do you see Kentucky hang around in that 4 spot? That's a team they have a big injury kind of come up. I'm anxious to see how things roll for them the remainder of the way. At these 3 seed mark, we have Texas A&M, St. John's, Texas Tech, Purdue. The one team I want to touch on from this 3 seed line, Garrett, is I feel like I'm repeating myself here, but why is St. John's still at the 3 seed mark? What am I wrong?
No, you're not. You're not wrong. I think they should probably be on the 2 line, and I think
Yes.
I think in place of either of the Big Ten teams that we're going to talk about on the 2 seed line, they should be in
Yes.
one of those two Big Ten teams.
Well, let's do the 2 seeds then real quick. Wisconsin, Alabama, Michigan State, Tennessee. And yes, Garrett, I was going to say the exact same thing if you didn't say that. St. John's should be on that 2 seed line over Wisconsin and Michigan State.
And you're going to see Michigan State if I don't know the score of the game now, but last I looked, they were getting beat a lot to.
I'll pull it up for you here.
Obviously, if they end up losing this game, that's going to drop them to a 3 seed.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. And once again, too, like we said before, we really got deep into this. After the conference tournaments, it's going to look totally different than this. But right now, Michigan State, down 34-45 at Iowa. So it's not looking good for them right now. Obviously, they're a team that can mount a comeback. 1 seeds, we have Auburn, Duke, Florida, Houston. Not really surprised by any of this. I don't necessarily disagree with any of this. And I'm okay if it were to end right now with Auburn, Duke, Florida, and Houston.
I feel sorry if that's how it ends. If that's the 4 1 seeds, I feel so bad for whichever 1 seed gets put in the same region as Alabama. I mean, seriously, having them as your 2 seed, having to battle through them to get to the Final Four is brutal compared to the other 2 seeds you're going to be looking at. But
and I'm just
one of these teams is going to have to be a 2 seed. That's the tough part about it.
Yeah, and I'm trying to just think off the top of my head if there's any of those 1 seeds that I feel like would be really, really vulnerable to Alabama. And honestly, I would say the most vulnerable for me against Alabama would probably be Duke and Houston, who I think are the 2 most likely teams to go win a national championship. In all honesty, right now, if I had to pick 2 teams, it'd be them 2. But I feel like they are a team that Alabama matches up really, really good against.
I think Duke is going to be vulnerable against any team outside the ACC. I think they're better than almost everyone else. I'm just scared of what's going to happen when they play a team that's not absolute dog shit. I mean, seriously, they're playing teams that are so bad. I'm worried when they have to get into a dogfight. They haven't been in a dogfight in 2 months.
How does, and we can save this conversation for a different day, but just off the top, how does the ACC recover from just how bad it really was this year? Because this is usually some of the dogs of all dogs in the country coming out of the ACC. This is a really bad year for the ACC.
I mean, Colin, you have like Clemson and Louisville both in the top 15. The reason they're there is because they're not losing any conference games besides to each other and Duke. You know what I mean? They're beating all these absolute garbage cans that they're ranked. I worry about all these ACC teams in the tournament. And you know what? They'll probably prove me wrong. There's probably going to be 4 ACC teams in the Elite Eight. But I don't see that happening just based on how bad it's been this year.
4 ACC teams.
4 ACC teams going to make it.
I'll get an ACC tattoo on my ass cheek if 4 ACC teams make the Elite Eight, man.
I think there's only going to be 4. Well, that's if UNC makes the tournament.
I was going to say there might only be 3 in the tournament. So with that being said, that takes us right into our Popping the Bubble segment. And the last 4 in as it sits is Oklahoma, San Diego State, Ohio State, and Boise State. And I'm going to go ahead and read the first 4 out real quick. And then we can kind of do some conference records, some quad 1 wins, and kind of dissect this a little bit and give our honest opinions. But the first 4 out, we have Xavier, first team out. UNC, second team out. Nebraska, third team out. Wake Forest, fourth team out. UNC is not in this tournament unless they somehow beat Duke at home this coming weekend or somehow make a remarkable run in the ACC conference tournament.
If they beat Duke on Saturday, it doesn't matter what they do in the conference tournament, they're in. If they lose to Duke, more than likely they're going to lose to Duke. It's going to be, for you basketball casuals out there, it's going to be better than the first matchup. I promise it will be. It's going to be a little bit better. I still think Duke wins probably handily, but it's going to be better. If they lose to Duke, they probably need to win 3 games. I'm serious. 3 games, maybe 2 games in the ACC tournament. The reason I say 3, you're going to see some teams steal bids in March.
Yes.
You're going to see a
Yes.
team like Northwestern win the Big Ten tournament out of nowhere and steal a spot. So they need to win 3 games to feel comfortable if they don't beat Duke. If they beat Duke, they're in no matter what.
If they don't play Duke better than how they played them last time, they have to go win the ACC tournament. Honestly, like if it was anybody but North Carolina in this situation, we probably wouldn't be talking about North Carolina finding a way into the tournament. And I'm just being honest. I mean, they are getting the brand recognition right now at this point to be even in this conversation. 13-6 in a terrible conference, 1-10 in quad one games. Their last win this week was against Virginia Tech. Congratulations, they're horrible, and you wrap it up at Duke. So not really playing into their favor at all. And to their point, all right, sorry, your point, you made this the last episode. What do you do when your conference is just that bad and you can't go out and you can't beat quad one teams, but you also aren't playing good enough teams to build the resume? That is where North Carolina is at right now. And I had somebody the other day, Garrett, ask me a question if I thought the ACC was just getting overshadowed and like as good, almost as good as the SEC, and the SEC was just overrated. And I was like, hey, look, man, like we don't need to have this conversation. Remarkable take.
No, that's the argument I'd put, the way that I'd put that. If you put, I'm not joking, Colin, if you put Auburn, if you flip-flopped Auburn and Duke this year, because I think Auburn's better than Duke. I really do. If you put Auburn in the ACC, do you understand what they would be doing to people? I mean, you're watching
They
Duke.
wouldn't have had a game within legitimately 30 points.
You're watching Duke do it right now. It's the worst conference I've ever seen in my life. And to answer your question, when your conference is that bad and you don't have these quad one opportunities, what do you do to build your resume? I'll tell you what you do if you're a North Carolina fan. Don't lose 6 games in conference.
Beat the shit out of everybody convincingly.
You can't lose 6 games in conference. I get it. You're playing Duke twice. You're playing Clemson twice and Louisville twice. Great. Beat them. Split them. Split your home and away against them. That's what you have to do that. And you can't afford any losses to anybody else. Anybody else.
No. Yeah, a buddy of mine out of state asked that question, and I said, hey, man, watch some more college basketball, please, because that you live in a different state, you must be in a different time zone, not watching the same things I'm watching. So another team that's on the first 4 outline, and I think we talked about them 2 weeks ago. Did we talk about Xavier in depth a little bit 2 weeks ago?
Very little. Very little.
Okay, I think they're a team for me that I would feel comfortable putting in Xavier over Boise State or San Diego State. Like, do you agree with that, or am I wrong?
I do, but it might be for the wrong reasons, Colin. Because I look at Xavier's resume. They've only beat one quad one team, very similar to UNC. Like proving you can win games, but you can't beat anyone that's decent. And that really is important to me. At least, I don't care if you have a losing record in quad one games. That's why you're a bubble team, because you lose more than you win. But you've got to prove to me you can win more than just one. And they've had 10 opportunities. They've come away with 1 win. They're in a much more competitive conference, obviously, than your Boise States, your San Diego States. That gives me a little bit more edge to put Xavier in just because of the conference they're in. But at the end of the day, you're not winning games you need to win. That's why they're sitting on the first 4 out.
So Xavier and UNC, 2 teams we just talked about, are the first 2 teams out of the tournament. If it all ended today, do you really think the media and the market and the money value would allow a San Diego State and a Boise State in over an Xavier and UNC? I really don't. And maybe I look into that just a little bit too much, but I feel like it's some things that we see time and time again that kind of shakes out, and that's why it happens. So, like, because we saw down here a little bit, look at Nebraska, the 3rd team out. Well, hey, man, they're 5-10 in quad one games, Garrett. So why aren't we having a more serious conversation about them than a Boise State that's, yeah, they're 22-8, but they're 3-5 in quad one, and they don't play in a great conference, or, San Diego State, who has a losing record in quad one games. I just don't feel like at this point, I almost feel like we're kind of splitting hairs a little bit. It's almost preference, I feel like, sometimes at this point.
It is. In my opinion, it's total preference. I think if you match these teams up against one another, if you did a round robin tournament, you had all these teams play each other, they probably all go 500. I mean, there's not one team that's substantially better than the other, worse than the other. The only reason they're in this bubble spot is because none of these teams can win games against quality opponents.
Yeah.
You got a bunch of teams that are very mediocre sitting in one spot fighting for 4 spots. And to be honest with you, Colin, the 4 spots they're fighting for might get taken by other teams anyway if these
Yeah.
competitions shape out different. So it could be completely changed. That's why these bubble teams need to win a lot of games in their conference tournaments. They have to, or else they're shot. They're absolutely
They need to win a lot of games in a little amount of games.
right.
In all honesty.
They have realistically 2 games left on their schedule, but they need to make sure they have 6.
Yes. I think the only team out of the 8 that we listed in Oklahoma, San Diego State, Ohio State, Boise State, Xavier, UNC, Nebraska, Wake Forest, I think the only team for me that's a sure lock in the tournament is Oklahoma. And not just trying to be biased because they just beat the shit out of Mizzou and they look dominant, but Jeremiah Fears is very good. I think Oklahoma's a really good team, and I think, to your point, they would be the only team if you matched up these 8 teams to play into the tournament. I think they would be the only team with a above 500 win record, or however you want to dissect that, in a little round robin tournament. I do think Oklahoma has some gas in the gas tank, and I think that I'm not going to say they're going to get into the tournament and make some noise, but I think if they had the best chance of these 8 to get into the tournament and make some noise.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not completely sold on Oklahoma. I think the fact that they're in the SEC and can win games they have truthfully 2 chances a week to pick up a quality ass win is very,
True.
very important. But you know what? They have 18 wins. They have 6 quad 1 wins this season. They deserve to be in this conversation. But they're 5-12 in conference play. Like, at some point, I don't know, Colin. I have a hard time with it because the SEC is just so good. I feel like you need to have as many teams in there as you can, but where do you cut the line with them? Like,
Yeah.
you're really going to put in a team who's losing essentially, I mean, obviously not quite, but they're losing like 3 out of 1. They're losing 3 games to 1 conference played, and you're going to put them in? Like, I just don't feel like that should be rewarded all the time.
Honestly, when you put it like that, it's hard to disagree. I guess it really comes down to, like, how do I word this? It really comes down to, do you value a team that plays really hard games every single game and wins some of them? Or do you value a team, back to UNC, that plays in a really shitty conference and plays really shitty games every week and wins them? Like, that's really what it comes down to. Like, what do you value? And I try to take a step back, and when I look at this, for me, this is just the way I look at this is, what team, if we're down to one final spot in the tournament here, and we're going to put a team on the whatever they end up being, a 12 line, whatever it is, who of these 8 has the best chance to go win their first matchup? Just to go in and win one game. Give us a quality game to watch on TV at 7 o'clock at night on the opening night on Thursday night. Who has the best chance? I look at all these teams, and for me, it is Oklahoma.
Yeah. I think to answer that question easily, the way that I would answer that question, if you had to give me one team, which team is going to give me the best fight against another team? Honestly, Colin, the stat I would look at, which team has the most quad 1 wins? Who's beat the most quality opponents? Because I don't really care if you're beating the Virginias, the Virginia Techs. I really don't. I really, really don't.
Yeah.
All 310 SEC teams that there are could beat them. The SEC conference is ginormous. They could all beat these teams. Can you beat your good teams in the conference? And Oklahoma's proven they can beat good teams 6 times.
Yeah.
They've had 6 more opportunities than UNC, but they are still beating teams at a higher rate that are good, and UNC's not.
I think, and maybe a hot take, maybe not, you may agree, you may think it's crazy. I think you put like Oklahoma in the ACC, I think their conference record's better than 13-6 like UNC's.
Oh, I think they're a top 25 team. I think they're in the same boat as Clemson and Louisville. I think that I truthfully don't think there's that much difference between an Oklahoma and a Louisville. I really, really don't. Obviously, play styles are totally different, but talent-wise, Louisville is in the spot they're in because they're beating the brakes off of really bad competition. Oklahoma's where they are because they're fighting their ass off night in, night out to win these SEC games just to make the tournament. Totally unfair, but that's the world. I mean, that was the ace. These two conferences are just flip flopped from 7 years
Yes.
ago. This is
Yes. Hey,
flip flop.
this is the life Oklahoma asked to live when they wanted to join the SEC. I mean, they did it to themselves. They played themselves.
Yeah.
All right. Well, unless you have any other teams you want to touch on here in our popping the bubble conversation, I feel like we touched on the heavy hitters, the teams that people want to hear about. So unless you have anything else, we're going to kind of move on to bangers of the week and wrap up our last regular season episode. Garrett, you good? Ready to move on?
Let's move it.
All right, man. Let's move on to our last bangers of the week segment of the regular season. And we're going to divide this into two parts here this week because it's really important at this point in time. We're going to have the bubble battle games and we're going to have the seeding battle games. Some of the seeding battle games are going to be much better basketball games, but have way less implications than these first few games that we're going to talk about under the bubble battle games segment. So Saturday, the 8th, we have Ohio State at Indiana. Obviously, Indiana no longer appears to be on the bubble, but if things go south, they might be out of the tournament still. So this is a very important game to pad the resume right here at the end. Ohio State at Indiana. Garrett, I really need to ask you who you got in this one.
I mean, Indiana needs it. They need it just as bad as Ohio State needs it. Obviously, they were an 11 seed. They were kind of off that bubble before their game Tuesday night against Oregon. They lost that game in a way that I still don't quite understand how they lost. They shot a better percentage from the field. They hit more threes. They had less turnovers, but they got tripled up from the free throw line. You get tripled up from the free throw line, you're not winning. I rarely complain about officials, but the officials were not going to allow Indiana to win that game. Huge game for both of these teams. I think if Indiana wins, they are squarely in the tournament. I think if Ohio State wins, they still might need to win a game in conference tournament to sneak in there, but a win at Assembly Hall is about as important as it could come. I hope the Hoosiers get it done.
Yeah, I'm going to take Indiana here as well. I think it's just at this point with this stage and what's going on with their coaching situation and everything they have going on with them right now, I don't think they win their last home game of the season. I just don't think that happens. Moving on to another bubble battle game, and this is really not for one team, obviously, but it is very, very heavy for another. We have number 2 Duke at UNC. UNC has to have it. I don't think there's any way they do get it. Give me Duke.
No, I don't think they win, but it will be a lot closer than the first game.
Has to be. Said this earlier. It has to be, or see you, bye, on to the next team. The next game we have, this is a really important matchup. Really, really important matchup. Texas is kind of flirting with that Indiana situation, right, where they seem to be okay right now. But if some of these teams win some conference tournaments and shake things up, they may not be good. We have Oklahoma at Texas. Garrett, make a pick.
I don't know. I really don't. I'm going to take Texas just because they're playing at home. I think they have a little bit more to play for. Obviously, Oklahoma is right in the middle of the bubble, but a loss for Texas is just like a loss for Indiana. Like, it puts you right back in the bubble. It's really important for both these teams. I'm going to lean with the home team in this one.
I've made a case for both of these teams to be in the tournament, Texas to be a dark horse to go in the SEC. So this is a tough one for me too. I'm going to take Texas. I think Texas is a really good basketball team. I don't think we've seen Texas's best basketball yet. I think they can really turn it on here, and it starts right now. Give me Texas at home. Kind of like the Duke UNC game. We have another one right here to be our last bubble battle game of the week. We have number 3 Houston at Baylor. Is there any chance in hell that Baylor can kickstart it right now?
Yeah, I think they win this one. It's obviously going to depend on what the line comes out to be, in my opinion. If I see Houston as a 6 or 7 point favorite, they're getting blown out. If I see Houston in that 1.5 to 2.5 range, and then maybe even Baylor pick them, it's going to be Baylor. I'm going to take Baylor to win this game regardless. Just I think they need it more, and they have to start showing it. We'll see. It's probably typical Baylor. I'm falling for it, but it's a game they have to win.
They have put me on a spinnerbait all season long. They've caught me all season long, dude. I just keep falling for it. I just keep biting the hook. Give me Baylor again, Garrett. I'm gonna do it with you. We're gonna do it one more time in the regular season.
It's a perfect spot. It's a lot like the spot you're seeing Michigan State in right now. Like, who really cares about this game? We're kind of just ready for the conference tournament to start. Houston's kind of got the Big 12 wrapped up. Like, it's a game I don't know if they have a lot to get up for.
No, they don't.
Baylor has everything to get up for. Can we see something
Yes.
once, please? Just one
If you
time.
see if you see no signs of life in Baylor in this game and they get waxed in the tournament, I'm talking to you next Monday about how they probably might have came up a little short. So Baylor at least show signs of life here. At least make it a damn good basketball game. Moving on to some seeding battle games, the real bangers of the week, it feels like. Starting off on Friday the 7th, we have, which will be the day that this episode releases, so it would be tonight if you're listening to us right now when this comes out, would be number 18 Purdue at Illinois. Garrett, this is a no-doubter for me, as crazy as this sounds. Give me Illinois.
I don't hate it. I don't hate it. I still lean with guards and coaching. I think Brad Underwood is fantastic at Illinois. I think Illinois has everything they need to win this game. You know what? Screw it. I'll go with you. I'll go Illinois. I'm talking myself right into them. I like him.
You are. Let's go, baby. Illinois,
like
got to get it going here. Let's get it started right here. Saturday the 8th, we have a loaded slate to start off on this Saturday for some big matchups here. Number 6, St. John's at number 20, Marquette. Who you got in this one, Garrett?
I feel like these teams just played like 3 days ago. I really feel like that. Marquette got their ass kicked the first time. They got humbled. I think this week they protect the ball a lot better and they come away with a win.
Yeah, this is probably the first time all season long I've picked against my team. Give me Marquette in this one. I think Marquette has more to prove and play for at this point. Not that St. John's doesn't, right? But I mean, this is just a game that Marquette probably comes into feeling a little pressure and has to get it done. So give me Marquette, and can't believe I'm taking Shaka Smart right here.
They're coming off a tough loss to UConn. This is a team
Yes.
that needs to start bouncing back. They don't look like themselves at this point. This is a great chance to get back at it. Obviously, against a really tough defense, it's going to be difficult, but they need it pretty badly.
Yeah, this is a find it and recover game. The next matchup, number 19 Kentucky at number 15 Mizzou. My Tigers look to be going the wrong direction. I'll be the first to admit it right now. They look to be slipping to me. It is time to ratchet it up. Garrett, you go first. I can't do this.
I think it's a really good spot for Mizzou. This is the team that, in my opinion, Colin, you're not going to like this at all. I don't think Mizzou's play style suits March at all. I think
No.
this is a really early exit year. Like, again, I hate how their team their wins rely on whether or not they go to the free throw line. I'm not joking. If they're not making threes,
Yep.
and they're not getting to the free throw line, like they shoot like 30 free throws a game every time I watch it. It kind of frustrates me. I'm not gonna lie, but if they just run into an official that doesn't want to give them these foul calls, they're toast.
Yep.
They're done. They're
And
done.
let's be honest, man. March, it's a little tougher to get to the foul line, it feels like.
I know. I just don't like their play style. I like their team build. Like, I think they win this week at home. I think they beat Kentucky at home. I think it's a good bounce back win for them. But I need to see more from them offensively other than free throws.
Let me ask you, I'm going to take Mizzou this week as well. I think it's an early exit for them as well. And here's one of the reasons why we're still playing 13 guys. We played 13 guys against Oklahoma, man. I have said this before. When you're playing 10-plus guys, I'm sorry, you're not that good. Or you're making really bad coaching decisions. And I don't spend a whole lot of time on this because it is Mizzou, but just my thoughts is I think Dennis Gates is a really good fundamentals, X's and O's coach. He's there for a reason, and I'm here for a reason, but there's a lot of me that thinks he overthinks a lot of this, or I'm missing something and he's just not telling us. Dude, you don't need 13 guys. You actually have 3 to 4 guys that are actually really good on this roster and should spend 34-plus minutes on the court. If they're not making shots, it's okay. These guys are really good. They'll find it. Grill will find it. Mark Mitchell will settle in. Tamar Bates will find it. Anthony Robinson's a really good point guard. Tony Perkins this season. They'll find it. Let them play.
Minutes are the most important thing for somebody struggling. Like, keep them out.
Yes.
Let them get out of the slump. Let them put up shots and find a rhythm. You know, playing these guys 24 minutes, you can't get into a flow like that. I had the same issue with Michigan State. When I was watching the game.
Yes.
10 players that play 10 plus minutes every game. It's too many. Way too many guys are playing. This time of year needs to be ratcheted down to 8. 8-man rotation.
Yes.
If you have somebody get in foul trouble, that's when you get deeper. But
yep.
Why you have so many guys? Why you have so many guys playing? You don't need it.
You don't need it, man. This is, and I'm going to move on. Spend too much time about Mizzou, but yeah, that is a problem. They're an early exit for me too. I hate saying it, but this is just what it is. I've lived this life with them for 28 years now. It is what it is. Moving on to the next game, we had number 25 Mississippi State at Arkansas. Arkansas needs it. Give me Arkansas.
I don't want to just keep going with teams that need wins. I really don't. If Taro doesn't play, they don't win.
Yeah, that's fair.
If Taro plays, they can win. I still think Mississippi State's probably a little bit too much to handle. I don't know. Give me Mississippi State. They get this win. Arkansas's done.
Yeah, they lose this. Whew, yeah, this would be not a bad home loss at home, but it'd be a bad way to end the season at home. Number 7 Alabama at number 1 Auburn. Game of the week. Incredible basketball game. You said at the start of this episode, this is a game that we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about that really doesn't mean shit, but it's just going to be a great basketball game to watch. I'm going to take Auburn since they are at home. I feel like you've got a little bit more to say about this than that.
Yeah, I do. Auburn beat Alabama on the road. Alabama gets revenge. They beat Auburn on the road. It's just a game. I think you see Auburn hit a little 2-game skid here. I really do. I didn't think they looked great against A&M. I thought they looked like a little bit slow. I thought A&M's guards gave them some fits. And I think Alabama gives them a little 2-game skid that just might, light a little bit of a fire under Bruce Pearl, which God forbid that happens because he's got a fire lit 24. Seriously, if they lose 2 in a row, it's perfect for them. Really, I'm not joking.
No, yeah, it is.
If they lose before this tournament, the better they're going to be. I promise. I think Alabama gets a win.
I'll be damned. Hey, I cannot wait for that one. If you're a casual out there, watch that basketball game. That's going to feel very tournament-esque already. The next game, number 24, Arizona at Kansas. 2 teams that I think are not that good. But give me Kansas. I'm repetitive. Kansas has to have it. And this Arizona team, to me, is still not that good. I'm rolling with Kansas.
I don't see Kansas continuing to lose at home. If this game was on the road, this game was at Arizona, I'm done with this Kansas thing. I'm sick of him, really. And I'm not even sick of the team. I'm sick of Hunter Dickinson. I'm tired of watching him.
Oh, it's horrible.
I thought the last game, and I'm drawing a blank of who they just played. I don't know why it's fading my memory of who I just watched them play. I don't know. I thought energy-wise, he looked way better. I thought he looked 100 times better than he has looked, but it's still not good enough. He looks like an old man out there to me.
It's honestly Houston. It's honestly really, really painful to watch. I'm with you, man, and I go on every episode about how I'm ready for Hunter Dickinson to be off to greener pastures, whatever he's going to do. If it's flipping burgers at McDonald's or playing in Europe, move on. I'm done with Hunter Dickinson. I'm ashamed I'm even picking him, Garrett, but I don't think they keep losing at home. I'm with you. Give me Kansas. I can't see it any other way. They can't go out the last game of the season at home and lose it. There's just no way. No way.
I agree. I do. They've got to win home games eventually. The team's not that bad. They're really not that bad. They're just worse than we expected them to be, so we give them a lot of trouble. And we talk about all the time how we're not huge believers in Arizona. Really, 2 teams that I really have no business watching this game. I'll probably just get mad watching it.
Yes. But I'm going to see Caleb Love shoot 40-footers, and I'm going to watch Hunter Dickinson not play defense. So, not my appetite there. I, yeah, moving on. Ole Miss at number 5, Florida. Really, really good basketball game here. I think Ole Miss brings more to the table than most people think, especially at this moment where they're another team that needs it. But hey, this is where I'm going to flip the script for me. Give me number 5, Florida. I think they're arguably one of the best, like arguably not one of the best. I think they're arguably the best team in the country right now. I think they found their stride. So give me Florida.
Yeah, I think Florida wins pretty handily here. I believe in Florida. I've talked about how I'm a little worried about their inconsistency, and really it's just the inconsistency of Walter Clayton.
Yes.
Still worries me a smidge, very smidge. He looks better and better every single time I watch him. Chris Beard for Ole Miss could be coaching his final handful of games until he is packing his bags and heading to Bloomington. So I want that to be I want his final few games to be good. I really do, but they're going to get beaten this one.
Yeah, I think so too. And I do have a lot of respect as a coach for Chris Beard and look forward to his future endeavors. But yeah, I think Arkansas wraps the season up, the regular season that is, at home with a W against Ole Miss. So Garrett, that brings us to the end of our bangers of the week, and that truly brings us to the end of the regular season. Unbelievable stuff. It's been a blast doing this with you. Anything else you want to hit us with before I take it away here?
No, I don't think so. We'll see you guys on not Selection Sunday, but post game Monday. We'll be here to bring you everything you need to know about the tournament. Probably even break down our brackets a little bit. I'm sure Colin and I will have 3 or 4 brackets made already.
Oh yeah. Yeah, buckle up because that Monday episode is going to be a doozy. It's going to be a long one. We are going to come from every region, from every angle, and dissect it. And honestly, Garrett, I'm going to try to really talk myself into how even the underdogs can win these games. Like, I really want us to really, really break this shit down and find a way for everybody. But with all that being said, this has been a blast. Hope you guys really enjoyed this. Leave some comments, like I said earlier. If you think something that we're saying is not right, let us know. That's not going to offend us. We would love to chat about it. But Garrett, hey man, tons of fun. This is Foul 'em Hard. You can follow us on X at DT underscore sports underscore. Instagram Deep Threat Sports with a Z, TikTok Deep Threat Sports Network, Facebook Deep Threat Sports Network, Spotify and YouTube at Deep Threat Sports. Once again, this is Foul 'em Hard. That's Garrett. I'm Colin. We'll see you guys Monday, the 17th, after Selection Sunday. It's March, baby. Let's get it going. Peace.